Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the Analytics India Magazine podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us Ratna Kumar or RK. He is the product lead at Netradine. Hi RK, how are you today?
Hi Kashyap, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Uh, so, uh, so today we are going to talk about an interesting topic, right? The idea is to discuss whether startups, right, tech startups, or in general startups can leverage AI within their scope. Uh, but the question is how can they? But at the same time, my question to you is should they, considering the limited budget, right? So let's start with that. Why do you feel that sometimes startups can benefit from AI, especially considering the technology is so costly and the resources that need hiring might not be the priority for tech startups or any other startup?
I think before we get onto that question, the first thing that we might have to understand is the scope and the landscape of where AI is. If you look at the last decade on how AI has progressed, it has come through the whole circle. Because if you remember, 5, 10 years ago, a lot of people would have started talking about they're running big data startup. know. Now the word big data doesn't exist anymore. People don't use the term. A lot of people have, you know, it's one of those terms, the term that people shy away from. From big data, they moved on to analytics startup. Then they moved on to AI startup. Now we have moved to the metaverse and things like that. But that is exactly what the technology landscape has been. For a long time, people were trying to perfect a lot of things. People were trying to take one step at a time and trying to perfect products. At this point in time, on where we stand, it has become the new normal. AI products across the globe has been able to, you didn't hit the saturation point. You're not going to hit the saturation point anytime soon, but you have at least hit a point where you call as democratized point, where it is sort of democratized across the globe. 10 years back, data was not democratized. You were still having problems with data collection and data collation. When you look at the data scheme, it looks like this. There's data collection, data collation, data organizing, analysis, analytics, and then model development, deployment, and then ingestion. So companies were having troubles in data collection and collation. So that is exactly where we used to be. Now we have moved on to the ingestion part, which means we have come across the circle. Now there's a high viability of clients being able to adopt those products. To a certain extent, it has democratized certain domains. I'm not going to say a company can suddenly become completely remote and AI could just run it off. But there
I
are
was
certain
just,
places
yeah,
where you can adopt AI.
I was just going to say because I don't. I mean, as long as the kind of my observations has been in the industry, and there's the talk that we are going to have on Friday as a part of the council as well, which is uh, about data democratization. So I don't think that problem has per se been solved as such in every domain, but probably certain areas or spaces maybe, and then maybe AI, a democratized AI or availability of AI, I'm not too sure. I mean, you are the you are the expert on it, so probably, maybe we can start. Yeah,
I'm sorry to cut
can
you in between. I think you can never democratize data. Okay. You can democratize information that is publicly accessible because
mm,
data is always like this, which is you can make two different inference of the same data. Somebody could look at the positive aspect of certain thing and somebody could look at the negative aspect of certain thing. Let's say I look at a specific window and say, oh, the user's interaction has improved from 5 seconds to let's say 7.5, which means it has moved 50% on the higher side. Somebody could look at the same point and then say there's a high probability or vulnerability of somebody not using it. There's a 25% of people who don't use the platform at all. It's
yeah.
still this data is just the same. It's just who looks at which part of the spectrum makes all the difference. But going back to your question on how AI can be adopted or should AI be adopted, I think I'm a firm believer it has to be. I think anything that people think as cutting edge has to be widely accepted and adopted for it to be able to go back to your going back to your point, to get democratized. You know, where only when a large audience of people start using a certain product is when it'll get the social accreditation. You know,
Okay.
it's not enough if IBM and Amazon uses a product. It has to be that, Analytics India magazines and smaller startups has to be able to adopt it. So they use both the end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned Analytics India magazine. Probably we can take that as an example to walk through this journey, right? Let's say, okay, now that we've got the fundamentals correct, right? We have understood where do we stand in terms of data democratization and the AI spectrum. Uh, where does a founder start, right? There's a startup, there's a founder. Let's take Analytics India magazine for example. We are a media company who produces content on AI and data science. But although I don't while to a certain extent we do use automation in some of our processes, to a large extent AI has not been imbibed into everyday processes. So how do we start? Where can we start? If you can take the anecdote, and maybe we can discuss as to how a media company can start, right?
See, when a specific term gets popularized, right, then it also becomes the most abused term altogether. For a long time, we say startup is the most abused word across the globe, because anybody and everybody can call themselves as startup. So similarly, then it become big data is the most abused word. At this point in time, AI is the most abused word because, like I said, people muddy the water because everybody's trying to have their hands at it. If, let's say, Analytics India magazine wants to adopt AI, okay, the first thing to be able to understand is themselves. First, you'll have to have an understanding about what is that as a company you stand for. What is your vision? What are the things you want to be able to do as a company in terms of their product, in terms of their service, in terms of their internal and external framework? What is the message that you're carrying outside to the ecosystem? So first is being able to understand themselves, then prepare a framework saying, okay, for me to be able to deliver these sort of services or these sort of products, what are the things I have to do internally for me to achieve that? That's number two. The moment you have these 2 points sorted, then you decide of these list of items, what are the places where automation is possible? Or where are the places automation is possible? Where are the places where I can adopt AI products? Because the most interesting thing about AI products is a, s- a AI product that works for Analytics India magazine will also work for Google. That's the most interesting thing about using or adopting an AI product. Let's say you use ChatGPT. I don't know if AIM already uses it, but let's say you use ChatGPT. AIM can use ChatGPT. Amazon can use ChatGPT. IBM can use ChatGPT. Google can use it. Microsoft can use it. They are all of different size, companies of different sizes, but they could adopt the same product. And that's exactly where smaller companies actually get the edge, because no more you are bounded by the size of your ecosystem. You could still leverage a certain product which could benefit you regardless of the size of the company or the budgets.
Okay, so essentially, yeah. So essentially, you're saying that when trying to identify areas for AI potential, it should be done in a way that it can be scaled to bigger companies as well. In the sense that if a bigger company is also able to use it, a smaller company should be also able to use it, right? Or is that something that we're trying to say, or is it just that?
That's one inference you can take out of it. But how I'm saying saying it is, the moment you figure out these are the processes or these are the touch points where AI is possible, what I'm telling is the AI that you're looking at fixing there should be in a way that even when you scale, or even as you scale, you can still keep using the same product. Okay,
Okay.
so you don't have to sort of rechange the whole ecosystem for that at all. What
Okay.
works for Google also works for AIM, vice versa.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
that's the funny thing about using AI products.
Yeah. Using AI/ML products like ChatGPT is one thing, right? But after the initial step of vision or mission, and identifying the right direction that we are heading, and in that sense, identifying areas where we can have intelligent automation or intelligent decision making. How do you kind of work towards recognizing the right use cases which can be built in house, right? And we'll come to the aspect of affordability of building in house AI use cases from scratch. But how do you start identifying use cases, because I think that is sort of the next step in this, right, if I'm not wrong?
So, of all the things that you spoke about right now, the best part of what I liked was the fact that you used the word intelligent. You know, when we start trying to automate or work around AI, augmented reality, and stuffs like that, when we start using jazzy, fancy terms, what happens is we lose the part that is very important, which is to be intelligent. Because I'm always an advocate of companies adopting AI technology. I'm always a very big fan of that. But am I the same big fan of companies building AI technology? No. Honestly, that's not something I suggest for a lot of companies, especially for startups. Unless your core fundamental itself is that product. Let's say for example, you are building an AI solution for automating crypto trading. Okay, then that is your product altogether. Then you can invest anything that you want, invest any number of people, any number of money. But if you're looking at a process automation and you want to build an AI tool for that, I always shy away from that, especially for startups, because end of all, I think the one thing a lot of people have to understand, and my very famous term that I use in a lot of meetings is this: data science is not magic. It is just math. It is just math. Okay. And it's an educated guess at best. At best, it's an educated guess, which means as somebody who's been in data for the last 14 years, okay, we might think anything about the data that we look at. We might think, oh, if I compute this, I'm going to get that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to increase the severity of this and then build an alert module on that. And then on top of it, I'm going to build this inference. It's going to sort of revolutionize the entire thing. But when you actually build the model, your accuracy will be less than 50%, less than 30%. So when a model gives you an accuracy which is less than a coin toss, it's worth nothing. You might as well
Yeah.
do a coin toss then. So
Yeah.
that
No,
is exactly
yeah.
one. Yeah, that
No,
is
I
one
was just
thing
going
where
to
a lot
say,
of
right.
companies go wrong.
Yeah, I was just going to say, right, in terms of AI, companies which are not specifically an AI product and they are trying to kind of imbibe AI into their daily processes, it can be very costly. Companies whose products are AI, they are also sometimes struggling to kind of solve important problems. But when especially your problem, your solution or product is not AI centric or intelligent centric, then does it really make sense to make an investment when you could be slightly diverting towards it? So is your approach or is your take on this more to kind of use existing AI tools rather than building your own to improve processes or improve decision making, or is it both ways depending on the case by case basis?
I think, I think holistically looking, it should be case by case basis. But looking at my experience, looking at deep into my experience, if you're not a company who's imbibed into building AI products, let's say you're a service firm, so you're a
Yeah.
product firm but not into AI, or you are into AI but on a very specific use case, then it is always better for you to sort of use what is available in the market. Okay, being able to work, thinking about my experiences in the past, I had worked for companies like Amazon's and IBM's. Okay, the biggest players in the market that you can think about. They do try building a lot of tools internally. They do. Okay, but on the flip side, they actually use the most sophisticated tool that is available outside to do the same process internally. Okay, let's say they might, Amazon or IBM might have a solution that is built inside, which is as good as, or which has to do what Slack has to do, for communication systems. Okay, they will have an internal tool, but they will still have Slack, and 99% of the conversation will still happen through Slack. Nobody will care about the internal tool, because we should always look at this product from two different angles. For Amazon, they do a zillion things, and this tool is one of those things that they're trying out. But for Slack, that's the only thing they do for bread and butter. So, which means they will always be miles ahead of you in terms of how to be able to present it, how the user experience has to be, the importance and the dedication that they have towards the product. Very, very seldom a project that you do internally really has that much value that it can be sort of scaled up to the external world. And most often than not, like I said, AI and technology has been in this path over the last decade, that most of the use cases that companies internally would have as challenges are sorted, and there are solutions that
Yeah.
is available. And why would you want to build something that is already there, spending a lot of
I
money?
love I love how this conversation has taken a very interesting turn. We went from discussing how to imbibe AI into startups to how to leverage AI tools which are existing rather than, because the IBMs and the Googles of the world are also preferring tools that are pre-built, and it makes a lot of sense, right? It wouldn't be in the end, every company, take be it AIM Media House or any other company, it's the processes or the kind of problems that we are trying to solve are very similar. The art of problem solving remains the same. um, so my next question to you, rather than one of my next questions was going to be to identify how to start hiring, right, instead of that. But I don't think that this is the, this is the right approach. We are trying to identify where are the right products for the right solutions. How do you kind of start identifying affordable right products to your particular problems? What is the thought process behind it after you have kind of identified some of the use cases where you can implement AI in your day-to-day processes? So how is that approached or should be approached?
I think that's a very good question to ask. But just before I answer that, I'll just go back to a slightly in depth on the previous answer once. The one thing that I had seen where companies were able to sort of adopt or build, even adopting is not an easy thing. Okay, that is exactly where the environment comes into play. The culture of the company comes into play. Like I said, I had worked in larger companies like Amazon and IBM, where they use external products and internal products. And I had also used work for very small companies, very small startups, where I was like the sixth employee, seventh employee into the startup, or I'm even the third employee, one of the co-founders in the startup. I had done both of those things where we had built certain things internally, which we know we would get it for a cheap price somewhere. Okay. We had built like Chrome extensions because we want to crawl some data. We would have got it for as simple as $50 subscription somewhere. But we used to sit and build it. I think that is again a cultural sort of when you have a cultural value saying, oh, we want to really push the walls against everything, it would work. Okay, but it wouldn't work every time. Okay, so going back to the next question on how to be able to figure out which is the perfect solution to look at. I think I, I think fundamentally that is exactly where, when I go back to the first point, the data democratization really helps. As on today, I don't think somebody can come to you and tell you that I'm not able to get enough information about a product or a service, because everywhere you could easily figure out. If you can't find out, at least you can figure out how to be able to use a certain product, how to do we really have the fit or not, what sort of scale that product would work on, operate on. Will it help our company? Is it the right, if we have a use case for this specific use case, could I use this product or not? These are socially available. It's not a secret recipe anymore. It's socially available information. But where I would start in general is but again, there are tools where you cannot really come to a conclusion till you figure out. Okay, let's say even from a product perspective, right? We use different tools. There is Jira, there is Slack, there is Trello, there is Airtable, there is a couple of other startup, Asana, you know, and Evernote. There are multiple tools that you could use for the same process. Which specifically fits your company, specifically fits your sort of process, depends on, again, I said, the culture of the company itself. There are certain companies which
Yeah.
are very design driven. Okay. Or if you're very design driven or marketing driven sort of companies, they tend to go more towards Trello, or let's say Asana. Let's say if your company is hardcore engineering driven company, tech heavy company, then they would deviate more towards Jira. Okay. So
Okay.
that is something that culturally has to align. I think
Yeah.
one thing that a lot of companies generally do these days is probably do a SWOT analysis even on using tools. I had personally done that. You know, we do SWOT analysis for different things, but we have even done for tools because at a certain point, especially we are talking about startups, right? It's not small money, especially let's say if you have, like, let's say a 50-member team. You're spending a lot of money to be able to get the license for a year. And most companies are pretty smart. They'll give it to you for a year. They're not going to give you a subscription for a month. They're going to give it to you for a year, and then 2 months into the lane, you're like, do I really use those tools? There are always those tools that is always around us. Every company, if you go and see, okay, they would have a very tight budget, but still they'll have like a plethora of tools that they really don't sort of have a hang on. They don't design using them. They're on, Figma. If somebody is using Figma, they don't need Adobe, but they'll have both of them at the same time
Yeah.
because one of your senior management has a little lenient towards Figma, so they adopted it. That is
Yeah,
something
I
to work.
think I think a recurring theme here is the culture, right? Culture. I think you've said it multiple times in the in your previous answer. I always thought that culture and its adoption has to do mainly with I thought the resistance or resistance to adoption of newer technologies was always among legacy companies, right? Older companies. But it's interesting to say that it's in startups as well. And then you are going and saying that despite that, somehow they adopt it and then they again find it useless. So, my last question to you is how do you kind of ensure that you avoid this? What are some of the challenges when it comes to, identifying the right product that will be sustainably used throughout the period of 12-month subscription rather than just 2 months where everybody forgets about it? And then finally, how do you think it will affect for companies who don't adopt AI, and how will they kind of uh, will they become obsolete if companies don't adopt AI anymore in their processes?
Um, Very good questions, to be honest. I think I just got reminded about all my experiences with different products at this point in time. It's funny that you mentioned it. You know, a lot of legacy companies actually adopt a lot of latest technologies quicker than
Is
you
it
think they
okay?
do. Yes. Okay. Because they always want to be in trend with the market. How much they use it, how do they use it is absolutely up to them. Or certain teams would use it better. There are certain teams that wouldn't use it better, but they always give a shot. But at the same time, what happens in smaller companies, let's say startups, okay, or a mid-level companies, is there is always this sort of fragmentation. There are certain startups which will be so engineering driven. Okay. There are certain startups which will be, so, like I said, design driven, sales driven startups are there. Okay. It's completely focused towards sales. Okay. Based on those, your, you know, emotional density towards certain things is more. They would try to
Okay.
invest more on those domains as well. Okay. And what would happen is they would always take a chance. I think one place where companies can be pretty smart about this, especially adopting AI technology, is being able to see not just where we are today, but where we want to be 24 months from now. Where do we want to be 36, 3 years from now? Where do we want to be 5 years from now? 5 years is a long time in any tech startup, any startup for the matter, leave even tech for that matter, any startup for the matter. So when you look at it from that threshold, then you think, okay, in that case, will I still have the viability for this tool or not? Let's say, you maintain all your records through Google Sheets. Okay, do I envision myself to use the same Google Sheet even 5 years from now? Is that the best technology that is possible? Now I have 20 people whom we can all collaborate together and be able to document things over there. But 5 years from now, we might have 2,000 people. Do we still envision using such sort of technology or not? I think that's the type of call a leadership team has to be able to make very quick. Okay, especially in the landscape at the speed at which startups operate at this point in time, I think they should be able to start taking such calls very early, so they sort of push the parameters right, saying, okay, this is the value that we want the company to have. You know, this is the type of communication that is sort of flown across the system. Only then you could, like I said, the reason I kept bringing the word culture sort of eases in across companies. Or else what would happen is, a lot of this happens to a lot of startups in between their series B to about series C stage. But it happens to a lot of companies. What happens is, till about series B there'll be a very tech heavy company, engineering heavy company, because all their entire focus would be on getting the product into the market. And then the moment you go towards Series C or Series D, now customer acquisition becomes a problem, or becomes a big matter, because the product is already there in the market. Customer acquisition, customer retention, customer success becomes the biggest challenge. Now suddenly you feel, oh, I have the most kick-ass product, but it's not resonating the message across the globe or across my
Mm.
audience. Then that is exactly where a lot of companies go for weird things. They change the logos, they change the color patterns, they change the user interfaces. That is to be done with every company at the same time. I think any startup is going to go through this curve. It's a
Yeah.
vicious circle. We might comment about it differently, but if you're a startup, you are going to go through the circle where initial part of it you're struggling to build the product, and then once you get there, then you're struggling to sell the product. Once you get there, then you're struggling to sort of retain the customers. Once you retain the customers, then it's cross sell and upsell opportunities that becomes a challenge. And they're going to constantly learn, unlearn, relearn. And answering your second question on companies getting obsolete, I think getting obsolete is sort of a harsh word to use in terms of AI adoption at this point in is concerned, because I'll tell you, uh, the best word probably to use is, they may not be the front runners. If you're not adopting AI at this point in time, or you cannot run faster. Okay, let's say, my personal experience is this: me and my friend, over a weekend, we were able to build an app using ChatGPT. Nothing, it's nothing professional, nothing personal. It was just like, we were there at home, we were having a lunch together, and then we were like, oh, we were talking about some data module on crypto trading automation. We were like, can we like build an app on that? There's chat gpt, right? Let's just try it out. We figured out which model to use using chat gpt itself. We built the module for us, and then I think it took us like 3 4 hours. We were actually able to build the most ground level of that application. It is not something you can go and get funded for, but it is something that you can use it for your personal use. Okay.
Yeah.
That is exactly what a good AI tool does on somebody who could actually use it good. Like you were mentioning before, the word that I like the most, like I was telling, intelligent automation. The word intelligent AI adoption happens at that point in time, or else, regardless of your adoption, it is always obsolete. one last thing that I concluded conclude this question is this, which is, even if somebody misses a bus today on AI adoption, AI growth is at that pace. They're not going to be left behind when they adopt it 6 months from now. They can always adopt it and sort of minimize the distance between them and the next guy, because
Okay.
AI, it has grown at that pace. You could adopt it 6 months later and still be able to run faster. It won't be a Kodak case. It will not be a Kodak case when it comes to AI adoption, because people are at least smart enough to understand in a quarter that, oh my god, my competitor is actually like churning. He's not churning. He's moving much faster. So people, when they adopt, they actually come at it much harder than the guys who is already using it. So
That's
it's gonna be a
yeah,
funny decade
yeah.
together.
That's an interesting perspective have, and on that note, Ratnakumar, thank you so much. Here's to being front runners and having AI driven cultures in startups and everywhere. Thank you so much for your insights. I think it has been a very interesting conversation, uh, and hope you had a good time.
Oh, thanks a lot, Kashyap. Thanks for inviting me, and it was an amazing conversation with you. And like I said, it is it is fun to talk about things like that, and especially on a forum like this, it actually makes a lot more sort of interesting eyeballs, and it could make a world of difference to somebody. And thanks for inviting me, and it is such a pleasure being a part of the conversation.
Cheers. Thank you.